2,552,550. That was the total amount of double battles simulated, all to find the best Pokemon in VGC Regulation G. And boy, did I find it. This all wouldn't be possible without the help of my good friend Dom, so huge shoutouts to him, as well as Smith's Play and his entire team for creating the simulation to begin with. But first, why? During my hunt for Smogon Steering Contributor Badge, I ended up dabbling a little bit into Doubles OU, which was super fun. However, there were two key differences between Doubles OU and VGC. The first was that all Pokemon were level 100 instead of level 50, and the second was that there was no item clause in Doubles OU. This means that realistically in Doubles OU, it is much more easier to optimize EVs as compared to VGC. And on top of that, in Doubles OU, I can run a full team of Assault Vest users or a full team of Citrus Berries users, whereas in VGC, realistically, you can't do that. Of course, this gave me some experience in doubles gameplay, like how Helping Hand is supposed to be super good, but overall, I was still an extremely big noob in the world of double battling, and I wanted to learn more. Before I proceed, the update my friend made to the simulator was very basic, which meant that one, simulated double battles were all 6v6 instead of 4v4 as intended by VGC. Second, the terrestrialization was not advised for the simulation at all, so any mon that had Terra Blast had to be removed and replaced with the next best coverage option. And 3, we only used teams that we could realistically recreate. This means that if we had to guess their EVs or if their EVs and IVs were just not listed, we remove them entirely. Technically, we can estimate and assume what EVs and IVs were used on the team, but it felt extremely disrespectful to the builder and the data, so we just removed them entirely. Nonetheless, we've still got some pretty good data, so grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's begin. When I say VGC's top Pokemon, I'm pretty sure the Pokemon that comes to your mind is this Pokemon, isn't it? I gotta tell you guys, when I did the simulation, I thought it was the same as well. I thought it was gonna be like Urshifu Rapid Strike, Miraidon, Shadow Calyrex, Incineroar, and maybe Farigiraf? Based on win-loss ratios alone, in second place, we've got this guy, Graveler. And in first place, we've got Vivillon. Win-loss ratios is one of the most common form of ratio to use to rank Pokemon in such simulations. However, the simulation I made was slightly different from others. Instead of just finding the best team, I wanted to find the best individual Pokemon and item as well. This meant that I couldn't solely depend on the win-loss ratio since it could easily be skewed by the amount of times a Pokemon was used relative to its wins. Vivillon and Graveler both won a lot because they were able to either provide very good support or just had extremely improved bulk thanks to Eviolite. That got me thinking, so what kind of ratios should I then use to determine the best performing Pokemon and how should the ratios be? First, win-loss ratios must be included because it is the clearest way of showing how well a Pokemon performed relative to its loss. I also included a win to total battle ratio to examine how well a Pokemon did relative to the total battle simulated. Win proportion ratio was also included as it showed how much a Pokemon contributed to the overall success across all simulated battles. Lastly, I added impact index and clutch performance ratios to round off and determine which individual Pokemon were the best and performed the best. And with these adjustments, were Graveler and Vivillon still the top 2 Pokemon in Simulation G? I guess at the very least they cracked top 100, right? They even outperformed insane Pokemon like Hisuian Zoroark, Hydrapple, and even Meowscarada. Yes, that's right, Meowscarada performed so poorly that it was in 221st place out of a total of 245 Pokemon and ranked 14th amongst the 60 starters that appeared in the simulation. These rankings will give us a clearer picture of who performed the best. Alright, are you guys ready? Here we go! At the bottom, you've got a bunch of meme Pokemon. You've got Greavard, you've got Slowpoke, Swablu, Grovyle, and Wigglytuff. Notably, Blaziken clocks in at 225, and Shiftry unfortunately clocks in at 222. I actually really thought Shiftry would perform better due to Windrider and Tailwind working extremely well in doubles, but it's very likely that its poor bulk made it extremely difficult to get the ball rolling. We've got Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Leafeon all at the bottom echelon of the tiers, and Raichu, Milotic, and even Gloom and Riolu outperforming Pokemons like Hisuian Zoroark, and Meowscarada. It is insane to me since Gloom isn't particularly the best option, and honestly, I keep saying this, but I have no idea what VGC players are cooking sometimes. And you guys know what's the worst part? Gloom was used on 3 separate occasions. At 197, we've got our smallest trapper Diglett performing even better than the Crowsmar Dawn, which is another insane point. But Diglett's success could be due to Pokemon not being able to switch out, but overall it's not a negative impact index, which means it's not very worth using on teams. At 193, we see Vigavolt, who surprisingly did a lot better than Ribombee, which I think is pretty surprising. But I guess it just had a bit more bulk than Ribombee. Executor is the lowest ranking Pokemon with an impact index higher than the average across all participating Pokemon, likely due to Executor being specifically tailored to run in Sun teams, allowing it to perform a lot better. Or it could be every single one of its head makes it a lot better. Who wrote this? Swampert is at 183 and Pomod is at 181. Pomod's Revival Blessing really clutched a lot of games because the restricted legendaries would be dead, and then Pomod comes in, clicks Revival Blessing, and Calyrex Shadow is back online. Pomod's team also carried Clefairy, who was extremely powerful in reducing the overall damage the team took thanks to its ability Friend Guard, which is very likely what helped push Pomod up the charts. 2 key players of Red's team, Pikachu and Snorlax, resides here at 176 and 175. Which is pretty interesting since these are technically meme Pokemon and the Pikachu used was a Sash variant. This Pikachu was probably designed to counter fake out users like Incineroar, which is pretty interesting and I've never seen such a structure before. The same team also ran coaching Galarian Zapdos, which is crazy because I didn't even know coaching was a move.
Before you can battle a gym leader, you'll first have to pass away.
Sunflora coming in at 171 was insane because when I saw this result, I had to double check to make sure that the simulation wasn't going crazy, but it just wasn't. It's just how good Sunflora is. And the best part is, I can't even say that it's because it was in a Sun team because Sunflora did not run Chlorophyll. It ran Sash, Early Bird with Endeavor, Encore, and Leech Seed with absolute minimum seed possible. Again, this was another case where the AI just didn't attack Sunflora and kept attacking its partner for some reason. And honestly, I have zero idea on what this Sunflora is supposed to do in VGC. So if you guys know how this Sunflora is supposed to work, please teach me and write it down in the comment section below because I'm so lost when I see this Sunflora. Gothitelle came in at 169, which was again a little bit of a shocker for me because I expected it to perform better. But thanks to the extremely high-powered ceiling of the format and the fact that Calyrex Shadow and Fluttermane just destroyed it, Gothitelle was a pretty poor pick in the meta. And it's pretty well reflected since it's only seen on 4 teams across all the simulations. Enamorous Tyrion comes in at 167, who was the newest and the lowest of the Tyrion family. And then you've got another wave of meme options. Are you guys ready? We've got Magma, we've got Poliwhirl, we've got Sentret. Yes, Sentret. Sentret was used a total of 8 times across all teams. And the sets are insane because it just seems to act as a redirector to ensure that Trick Room on teams go off. Which is probably why it was able to perform. I mean, when you are pairing Sentret on teams with powerful heavy hitters like Calyrex Ice, Urshifu, and Iron Hand, it does make sense that people will aim for the heavy hitter, allowing Sentret to redirect effortlessly. Neutralizing Gas Cantonian Weezing comes in at 159, which is pretty interesting since it's not as versatile as Galarian Weezing, but because its typing is pure poison, it's really good defensively. A few players opted to use that instead of Galarian Weezing, which kinda says a lot about Weezing, doesn't it? Alright, I can hear you asking already, Mocha, so what about the starters? Is the top starter still? Okay, fine, what about the second? Okay, that's pretty fair, considering that Incineroar is way too powerful and overused and Rillaboom is way too consistent at control. It is to be expected that within the bounds of the simulation, they are still first and second place. However, the gap between the second and third place is wide. Venusaur comes in as the 3rd best starter by being overall in 78th place, and Charizard clocks in 4th place by being the last starter in top 100. However, when you rearrange the starters according to their impact index, Venusaur and Charizard rank a lot higher than Incineroar and Rillaboom. This means that despite Incineroar and Rillaboom seeing a lot of plays, because they experience a lot of losses by nature of being a lot of teams, their impact on team structures were watered down. Venusaur and Charizard, on the other hand, were specifically played in structures that were designed to abuse them, like in Sun in this instance. So this created a situation where the presence of Venusaur and Charizard was significantly improving the teams that they were on by nature of them being weather abusers. Moving on, Hisuian Decidueye, which has seen an interesting amount of play and utility in Regulation H, clocked in at 10th place amongst the other starters and was only seen once in Regulation G. What was really interesting was seeing teams that were piloting starters like Grovyle, like Braixen, who clocked in at 16 and 17, and honestly kudos to the players for actually making it work because the AI couldn't even think of a way to get it to work. Surprisingly, Braixen actually has an impact index of -90, which is well above the average impact index across the starters. Sceptile, Torterra, and Blaziken, come on, what are you guys doing? You all perform poorer than Braixen. This also kinda tells us that starters aren't really the best Pokemon to use in such teams, but then again, Parent did tell us to use our favorite Pokemon, so I also just want to say, Greninja fans, where do you guys go? Alright, moving on, let's talk about Paradox Pokemon, shall we? Pokemon of the past dominated the meta, while most of the future Paradox Pokemon kinda didn't perform as well. Iron Thorns, Iron Leaves, Iron Jugulis, Iron Threads, Iron Valiant of all, they all struggle to keep up with win-loss ratios falling heavily below the average. I honestly thought Iron Valiant was gonna be super good, but it's kind of ass cause Lord RNG just really hated it. So what if you have good stats and good move pools? If you are a victim of 1,933 crits, and of those crits, 1,075 costed your team the game, you're not gonna perform. On top of that, future Paradox Pokemons were the only ones with a negative impact index. Past Paradox mons like Gouging Fire, Walking Weight, Raging Bolt, Brute Bonnet, and even my personal favorite Scream Tail all managed to pull through. So who are the top 5? In 5th, you've got Walking Wake, the Paradox form of Suicune. With a win-loss ratio of 1.25 and an impact index of 80.6, Walking Wake found a niche in Sun teams. A lot of players use them in Sun teams that comprise of Groudon or Koraidon, whose Sun boosting abilities were able to power up Walking Wake's Hydro Steam. On top of that, in this unique ability where you are mostly going to be playing mirror matches against weather, Walking Wake's ability to function both in the rain and the sun really played to its niche. However, its reliance on weather to be able to perform kind of meant that it struggled in matchups outside of weather, and that prevented it from climbing up higher in the ranks. Coming in 4th, we've got Gouging Fire, the Paradox form of Entei. With a win-loss ratio of 1.2 and an impact index of 65.7, Gouging Fire proved to be a dependable attacker. It had immediate firepower, literally and figuratively, which allowed it to destroy through a lot of threats, especially if you have sun-boosted power in your hands. However, in a meta with a lot of fast-paced attackers like Calyrex Shadow and Kyogre, Gouging Fire's relatively average speed prevented it from being a top-tier threat and taking control of matches entirely. In 3rd place, we've got the only future Paradox Pokemon, Iron Bundle, which is the future Paradox of Delibird. With the highest impact index of 141 and a win-loss ratio of 1.49, Iron Bundle excelled at speed control and punished a lot of water-type restricted Pokemons like Kyogre and Walking Wake. Freeze Dry was invaluable in this doubles meta because whenever the rain came up, Freeze Dry was there to just neuter the water threats. Iron Bundle was also played alongside fast restricted legendaries like Miraidon, who was able to use his speed to set up plays, and you guys know how Miraidon is. Miraidon is just really broken. However, against bulkier Pokemons like Dialga or Necrozma main, Iron Bundle struggled to maintain the momentum needed for it to perform. In 2nd place, we have Raging Bolt, the Paradox form of Raikou. With a win-loss ratio of 1.07 and an impact index of 24.3, it was an extremely strong pick in not only Trick Room teams, but in standard offensive teams. This is because it has what is called the Special Electric Sucker Punch in the form of Thunderclap. On top of that, you also have the ability to use Volt Switch as a pivot, and the ability to just come in on Sun teams and Rain teams, much like Walking Wake, makes it an extremely popular choice in double battles. Raging Bolt paired extremely well with other restricted legendaries, but in particular Calyrex Ice. Its main challenge though came from faster restricted threats like Calyrex Shadow or speed boosting Koraidon, where it occasionally found itself outpaced, and the AI wasn't the best judgment call on using Thunderclap. Even when there were no Pokemon attacking, it would just click Thunderclap, and it kinda just hindered Raging Bolt's performance. Despite all that, it still came in at an astounding 2nd place. So who's the top dog amongst all the Paradox Pokemon, you ask? Do we really need this section, guys? Come on. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? The number one Paradox Pokemon in Regulation G is Fluttermane, the Paradox form of Misdreavus. It's not really a surprise if you ask me. With a win-loss ratio of 1.29 and an impact index of 92.1, Fluttermane was a consistent threat. Its combination of Ghost and Fairy typing and exceptional speed allowed it to outspeed and deal devastating damage to all sorts of restricted Pokemon like Calyrex Shadow and Zacian. By the way, if you guys wanted to have a challenge, count the number of times I say Calyrex Shadow and leave it in the comment section down below. Anyway, moving on. It was able to destroy the entire metagame with Moonblast and Shadow Ball, so undisputedly, it ended up being the top performer amongst all Paradox Pokemon. And here's something pretty interesting that I noticed. All 5 of the top performing Paradox Pokemon originated from Johto in some way. You've got Walking Wake with Suicune, you've got Gouging Fire with Entei, you've got Raging Bolt with Raikou, you've got Fluttermane with Misdreavus, and even Delibird in Iron Bundle. They all came back stronger than before thanks to Paradox forms. This kind of brings me to another interesting conclusion as well, because if you're at the game shop and you're like, oh my god, should I buy Scarlet or should I buy Violet? Scarlet is definitely the better option. In 157, we've got Kyurem Black and Necrozma Dust at 152. And then in 151 and 150, we've got the Fairy and its Shadow, Clefable and Sableye. Clefable is one of those Pokemon widely known as an evolution that didn't really help Clefairy. Considering Clefairy has access to an insanely broken ability in the form of Friend Guard, there was almost zero reason to use Clefable over Clefairy. Or is there? The two
Clefable
teams that use them pack Clefable with Utility Umbrella, which neutralized the power boost and dropped from sun and rain weather effects. This gave Clefable a good defensive boost and allowed it to survive longer and redirect ball hits from the heavy hitters. Sableye, on the other hand, is pretty interesting because its primary use is in enabling gravity-centric teams. But in general, they are really rare to begin with. Sableye therefore pairs very well with ground types like Groudon, and honestly, I'm quite surprised that the AI managed to use it to some degree of success. Giratina Origin comes in at 149, while my favorite pastry dog Dashboon comes in at 143, with an impact index of 72 and clocking in well above the average of -47. Zekrom clocks in at 140, and above Zekrom, we've got some meme mons. Altaria comes in at 139, and Furret comes in at 137. Both variants of Altaria were Tailwind supporters, and they were both part of teams that were hyper-offensive in structure. Also, I think it was pretty insane that one of the starting plays the simulator made was Altaria goes for Tailwind and Calyrex Ice goes for Trick Room. Altaria goes for Helping Hand again, and then Calyrex Ice goes for Trick Room again. What? One of the few times where I was genuinely worried that the simulator was broken, but in the end, I think it was just this one little interaction that acted kind of oddly. Furret, on the other hand, was also a powerful redirector, much like its baby counterpart. It also had enough speed to act as a knockoff supporter, since Scarf knockoff can truly do a lot of damage to an underprepared team. Iron Boulder comes in at 133, and pretty much one of the rain abusers from Legend Arceus, Overquill, comes in at 132. Iron Leaves at 129 and Glastrier at
123.
Glastrier also spotted a win-loss ratio of 1.47, which is honestly really insane to me since it was well above the average compared to the rest. It even outdid Great Tusk in 125, and as a singles player, seeing my Overlord Great Tusk fall this far down the charts is really disheartening. Moving on, Armarouge clocks in at 123, and Lugia, who holds the record of holding the longest battle in the simulation with Aetonators, clocked in at 121. You've got the meme edgelord prankster himself, clocking in at 118, Murkrow. Murkrow is pretty interesting since the support it provided allowed the teams that it was on to succeed really well. It was the prankster mon that was able to outslow opposing pranksters, so it could counter weather style effectively. Another meme lord who saw usage in 23 teams but was heavily neutered due to the AI not truly understanding how to use it was Smeargle at 116. Smeargle's moveset differed from team to team, which made it extremely difficult for the AI to properly use. Sylveon comes in as the second place evolution on the chart at 114, who was able to utilize Spread Pixelated Boosted Hyper Voice to destroy opposing teams, since it ignores redirection, rendering mons like Sandshrew and Clefairy really useless. Next, we've got the first weather setter on the list, Torkoal, sitting at a solid 113. Thundurus, another prankster utility mon, sits at 112, and Espatra sits at 111. Espatra without Terra Blast is kinda garbage because it kept getting walled by a lot of mons, but it had an impact value of 75, which is incredible from my point of view. Epipom clocks in at 107, and at 106, we see Iono's Belly Bolt, which isn't honestly that surprising since a well-built Belly Bolt can actually take a lot of punishment. Umbreon is the highest rank evolution who sits at rank 105, and funnily enough, Umbreon was also one of the most flinched mon in the simulation. Another case of how AI really hates Umbreon because it had a total count of 2,873 flinches across all simulations. Iron Threads and Iron Crown rank 102 and 101 respectively with an incredibly respective 125 impact index. And sitting comfortably on the line itself, on the 100th position is our iconic Fire Lizard himself, Charizard. I mean, I guess with that we can say that Charizard is safely top 100 Pokemon of VGC Regulation G, right? Okay, so we've gone through starters, we've gone through Paradox. It's time to shine the spotlight on the restricted Pokemon themselves. The powerful restricted Pokemon that you can only use one per team in Regulation G. We're talking about monsters like Miraidon, like Calyrex, like Cosmog, like Terrapagos, like Cosmoem. You know, overpowered restricted Pokemon. So how did they perform in a team battle simulation? Surprisingly, a lot of restricted legendaries did not perform well at all. We've got the bottom of the barrel with Palkia, we've got Necrozma, we've got Cura Black, we've got Necrozma Dust, and Giratina Origin. In particular, Necrozma Dawn performed incredibly poorly with an absurdly low win-loss ratio and a staggering impact index. Zekrom and Reshiram both surprisingly have a positive impact index with a win-loss ratio that hovered extremely close to the average, with Reshiram falling below and Zekrom going above. Does that mean Pokemon Black is better than Pokemon White? Lugia, despite its absolutely poor performance, resulted in one of the longest games in the simulator. Have you ever seen a VGC doubles game go up to 75 turns? Then we come to one of the most insane restricted Pokemon and the battles that it has partaken in the simulation. Keeping in mind that we have no terrestrialization, Terrapagos only stays in its battle form and cannot access its 700 base stat total stellar form. However, that did not reduce how tanky Terrapagos was. It scored an insane 1.49% win proportion, which was well over the restricted average, and honestly that was crazy because this was a normal type Terrapagos with no boosted Terra Starstorm. Honestly, I was fully ready to accept that Terrapagos was gonna be the last on the list, but apparently Palkia had other plans for me. In 14th place, we've got the biggest restricted menace in VGC Regulation G by usage alone, Calyrex Ice. Its clutch performance of 19.5% was well above the restricted average of 5%, making it one of the most reliably used Pokemon amongst the restricted. It also showed up in a total of 140 teams, so that kinda helped it as well. However, reflecting on the performance of slower restricteds who thrive in Trick Room settings, it was pretty clear that the AI wasn't really the best at using Trick Room Pokemons. This caused Calyrex Ice to see a lot more losses than it should have gotten, which meant it performed a lot poorer than its shadow counterpart. Both hero forms of Zamazenta and Zacian performed a lot better than they should have because they had excellent speed and the AI just kept giving them chances to set up and sweep. And honestly, I'm not surprised that the Crown forms performed even better. This caused them to actively support their team extremely well, resulting in an extremely high impact index for both Zacian and Zamazenta. Kyogre, the premium race setter in VGC, clocks in at rank 9, while Shadowrex clocks in at rank 6. And Groudon, the premium sun setter, clocking in at rank 4, proving that Ruby is better than Sapphire. This correlates with the Paradox performance, of course, since past Paradox Pokemons use Sun to set up their photosynthesis, and on top of that, heavy hitting fire types were able to just utilize the Sun boost as well. Combine that with how weather mechanics favor the slower Pokemon, it's unsurprising that Groudon ended up coming on top over Kyogre. Moving into top 3, in 3rd place, we've got Miraidon. Unsurprisingly, Miraidon's powerful nukes and ability to set up electric terrain has made it an extremely dangerous threat. You've got electric terrain, you've got choice specs, you've got Hydron boost, you've got stab, you've got powerful discharges which ignore redirection. It's insane. But the presence of Rillaboom undermined Miraidon a bit because it was able to just reset the grassy terrain, but that didn't mean that Miraidon didn't perform. Zacian Crown takes the second place despite Intrepid Sword's nerf in Scarlet and Violet. And honestly, I think the simulation just kinda loves Zacian Crown. It just keeps giving it chances to set up. It's insane because one of the biggest highlights for Zacian Crown was that it soloed 2 teams back to back in simulations. Honestly, I think the AI kind of favors Zacian Crown to some degree because it was able to just click Protect, Swords Dance, Protect, Swords Dance, and then click Behemoth Blade, and then click Player Up, and destroy every single Pokemon on the opposing team. And Zacian just didn't get targeted at all. It was just insane. And clocking in first place among all the broken Pokemon is Koraidon. Koraidon's Orichalcum Pulse allowed it to set up the stun, get attack boost, and when you put it with Pokemon that could abuse the sun like Walking Wake and Flutter Mane, it was just able to control the tempo and destroy a lot of teams in general. In fact, with a stunning win-loss ratio of 1.38 and an impact index of 114, Koraidon proved that it is the top restricted Pokemon in Regulation G, and not Calyrex Shadow, surprisingly enough. Okay, so a breakdown of team structure probably wouldn't be complete without discussing or analyzing items. Primarily, I wanted to know how effective were certain consumable one-use items like berries and seeds, and well, I got an answer. No surprise that when it came to berries, team often opted to use HP berries like citrus and nature berries like Figgy, Wiki, and Aguav berries. Majority of the damage reduction berries like Shukka and Cobra were not considered over other items due to their one-use nature, and as a result, their impact index was severely affected. Seeds, on the other hand, were pretty interesting because Electric and Psychic Seed were unsurprisingly very well performing. You've got Electric Seed that couples well with Miraidon, and you've got Psychic Speed which couples well with Psy Spam teams. While the other 2 grass-type seeds, Miracle Seed and Grassy Seed, saw decent levels of success. But Mocha, come on, Miracle Seed and Grassy Seed are different. One is a... I know, I just thought it was funny and I just thought it was a very good segue for me to go from talking about one-use items in seeds into talking about elemental boost items. Speaking of elemental items, Miracle Seed, despite having a usage count of 48, came in 6th place. Magnet came in 4th, Silk Scarf came in 3rd, Mystic Water came in 2nd despite having the most usage among all the elemental boosting items. And in 1st place, we've got Black Glasses. Black Glasses is there because fundamentally King Gambit is a very broken Pokemon, and I guess Galarian Moltres sometimes uses it. There were some interesting items that I have never really seen in singles before, like Fairy Feather and Room Service and Utility Umbrella. Like Utility Umbrella were just generally outclassed as an item because Weather Walls are not very common in OU, and Room Service is just not really good because Trick Room is not a very consistent strategy, which is actually very eye-opening to me to see them being used in doubles. Throat Spray was Farigira's honorary health item since it boosted Uproar's power and most importantly was played on Wigglytuff too. Loaded Dice clocks in at 37 and saw interesting niche usage on a lot of different Pokemon such as Victory Bell, such as Torterra, Brute Bonnet, and even Koraidon used it. Eviolite comes in at 25th, which is pretty interesting since it saw a lot of usage on different NFTs like Graveler and Clefairy, which still kind of boggles my mind on how anybody can use Graveler in this time and age. Assault Vest clocks in 13th, while being the 2nd most used item in the simulation, but racked up a win-loss ratio below the average of 0.9. Booster Energy came in 9th, with an incredibly high clutch performance of 38.8. Choice Specs outperforms Choice Band and Choice Scarf, coming in 4th place as the best choice item in Regulation G. Probably because a lot of major attackers in the metagame are special attackers like Chi-Yu, like Fluttermane, like Miraidon, and Shadow Rex. Clocking in at an overall 3rd place, we've got Focus Sash, the best meme item if you ask me. Focus Sash was the most used item and the most clutch item, which is honestly extremely unsurprising given how it's basically a free endure and can easily turn the tides in the simulation. There were so many times where the AI would just set up and then get dealt with by a Focus Sash mon, which kinda reflects reality in a very greedy sense. Then you've got Light Clay in 2nd place, which was a little bit surprising to me. I was fully expecting something insane like Assault Vest or Booster Energy or even Covert Cloak, who all had extremely impressive showings but didn't make the chart. Screens must have played an extremely important part in the simulation because it was able to water down attacks and allow some setup moves to go through, and it must have been an extremely important step in this high-paced metagame. And sitting proudly in first place, you've got Clear Amulet. In case you're a singles player and have never heard of the item Clear Amulet before, it's basically a health item that prevents the foe from lowering your stats via things like Intimidate or Parting Shot. Just from that alone, it should tell you how pivotal this item was in the success of many Pokemon, since Intimidate spam was everywhere in the game. Even in a metagame where the strong powerhouse attackers were specially oriented like Calyrex Shadow, Miraidon, Fluttermane, Clear Amulet still saw insane usage and insane win rates solely due to its ability to block stat drops. Truly the top item of the metagame, deserving of its position. But before we get too caught up in the rankings, I think it's time for us to take a little break, step away from the data for a second, and dive into some war stories. Wait a minute, podcast, so what is a war story? A war story basically details a Pokemon match with the goal of entertaining the readers, or in this case, I guess the viewers, alright? Usually it explains the thought process of the storyteller and sometimes both players. You see, this entire script has been based on the result of massive simulation with VGC team battles where millions and millions and millions of battles were played out. While we've talked a lot about the Pokemon themselves, we actually never really talked about the battles that came along the way. First up, we've got Rajan Bal's Indianapolis Championship team versus popular YouTuber Moxie Boosted's regional team. Remember, this is all just a simulation, and I didn't actually get Rajan Bal to face off against Moxie in a 6v6 battle. Alright, here we go! Alright, the stakes were high as Moxie faced off against Rajan in the nail-biting Regulation G doubles battles. Both trainers brought teams full of threats. Moxie's team looks like a pretty classic offensive team with a Trick Room, Farigiraf and Ursaluna Blood Moon core, coupled with some heavy attackers like Shadowrex and Raging Bolt, while being supported by offensive spread defender Miensha and bulky utility Wo Qian. Rajan's team, on the other hand, had the powerful Miraidon Nuke, as well as the classic Trick Room Farigiraf coupled with utility mons like Incineroar and Whimsicott. His team is also packing Kieran's favorite green ogre, Ogerpon. And honestly, I have no idea what it does since it's an offensive and delete hazard stackers in singles, so I'm quite excited to find out what it does here. Starting off, Moxie leads off with Raging Bolt and the bulky Wo Qian, while Rajan opened up with the classic combination of Whimsicott and Ogre. Rajan used Follow Me on Ogre to draw priority attacks away from Whimsicott to ensure that it's able to set up Tailwind freely. Moxie's Raging Bolt responded with Electro Web, chipping away at both Whimsicott and Ogerpon, and most importantly, reducing their speed. This somewhat mitigated the Tailwind boost Rajan had set up. Meanwhile, Wo Qian went for Snarl, further weakening Ogerpon's special attack that it doesn't use, while Whimsicott dodges the attack. In an attempt to apply offensive pressure, Rajan made a key switch, withdrawing Whimsicott and bringing in Miraidon. As the electric terrain surged onto the battlefield, Miraidon's Hadron engine activated, boosting its already terrifying special attack. Ogre went on the defensive using Spiky Shield to block Moxie's incoming moves. Moxie, however, wanted to truly reduce the speed boost from Tailwind. Raging Bolt's Electro Web barely scratched Miraidon, dealing only 5.7% damage, but lowering Miraidon's speed nonetheless. Wo Qian went for a foul play, but Ogerpon protected itself, and since foul play was a contact move, Spiky Shield damages Wo Qian instead. Moxie makes a critical switch here, withdrawing Raging Bolt and sending out the powerful Ursaluna Blood Moon. Meanwhile, Wo Qian protected itself, knowing it needed to play conservatively to avoid Rajan's upcoming offensive. Rajan's Miraidon dropped the Draco Meteor onto the Ursaluna slot and instantly vaporized it from the face of the earth, putting Moxie on the back foot, turning it into a 5v6 for him. In return, Moxie sent in the insanely powerful Shadowrex, while Rajan switches out Miraidon for Farigiraf, triggering Electric Seed, which boosts his defense upon entering in the electric terrain. Moxie greedily goes for the +2 on his Shadowrex, while Rajan goes for the Ivy Cudgel on Wo Qian in an attempt to make it easier for his offensive monster to clean up. However, Wo Qian attacks back with Pollen Path, dealing a significant damage to Ogre. Knowing how crucial Shadowrex will be for the endgame, Moxie switched it out for Farigiraf, knowing that Armor Tail will prevent Rajan from using any priority moves, which Rajan does not have on the field. Rajan's Farigiraf goes for the foul play on Wo-Chien for 27%, while Ogre, true to its, role, I guess, used Follow Me again, trying to shield its partner from incoming attacks. Come on, Rajan. However, Moxie's Wo-Chien uses Snarl, which is a spread move, so it bypasses Follow Me anyway and further lowers Farigiraf and Ogerpon's special attack. Rajan's Ogerpon once again took the brunt of the damage, using Follow Me to protect Farigiraf, but Moxie pulled off a clutch play by having Farigiraf use Imprison to seal moves that it shared with Rajan's Farigiraf, specifically Trick Room, locking Rajan out of setting up Trick Room for Ursaluna to come in and wreak havoc. Moxie's Wo-Chien fires off an attack into the Ogerpon slot and finishes it off in the process, and the turn finally shifts into Moxie's favor. Rajan sent in Incineroar, whose Intimidate is so scary, but Moxie immediately withdraws Wo-Chien from Mienshao in anticipation for the upcoming attack from Farigiraf. Incineroar fired a Helping Hand boosted knockoff on Moxie's Farigiraf, dealing massive damage and knocking off his safety goggles, killing it in the process. Shadorex re-enters the battle once again, threatening Rajan with its overwhelming power. On the following turn, Shadorex protected itself and Mienshao went for the close combat on Incineroar, leaving it at just 4% health, which I suspect is a minimum roll. Then, Rajan's Farigiraf used Trick Room once again now that it's no longer blocked by Imprison, giving Ursaluna a chance to come in once again. Moxie, knowing that his win con was Shadorex, quickly brought Wo-Chien back in, while Rajan continued to maintain the pressure by firing off high-powered Helping Hand booster knockoffs, but failing to nab the kill on the bulky Wo-Chien, who is still alive at this point. I would have honestly thought it was knocked out by now. Moxie capitalizes on this and goes for the slow U-turn on Incineroar and nab the kill, but loses a bit of momentum as it brings in Raging Bolt, while Rajan brings in Ursaluna to force the Trick Room battle. Moxie went for the protect on the Wo-Chien, while Rajan went for the protect on Ursaluna, and Farigiraf foul played the Wo-Chien slot. Raging Bolt goes for the Snarl, lowering Farigiraf's special attack. Moxie brings Mienshao back out, knowing it can at least go for the priority move despite there being a Farigiraf with Armor Tail on the field, and Rajan fires off a Snarl weakened Blood Moon onto the Raging Bolt slot. Rajan's Farigiraf now goes for the Helping Hand to boost Ursaluna under its last Trick Room turn, while Moxie goes for the Wide Guard on Mienshao, expertly predicting that Rajan will use the spread move Hyper Voice instead of Earth Power onto the Raging Bolt slot, and use Raging Bolt to continue snarling at Rajan's team, knocking out Rajan's Farigiraf in the process. Rajan then brings Miraidon back into play now that Trick Room is no longer a factor, and Moxie also no longer fears Ursaluna as it's now at -2, despite having never dropped a single Draco. He in turn drops a Draco onto Raging Bolt, does not miss, and fully knocks Raging Bolt out, while Moxie's Mienshao goes for the close combat for some unadulterated pain onto Ursaluna, knocking it out. Knowing that his Mienshao will be the key to winning the game, Moxie expertly switches Mienshao out into Wo-Chien to sack it off, so that Mienshao can freely come in for the last turn. Calyrex Shadow comes in and goes for the protect, anticipating that the Draco is going to be dropped by Miraidon. Mienshao comes in for the fake out onto the Whimsicott slot. Why not the Miraidon slot? Okay, anyway, whatever. Doesn't matter anyway. Since for some reason, Rajan drops a Draco onto the Mienshao instead of the unprotected Shadorex, which allows Moxie to greedily get a +2 and clean up the rest of the game with one insanely high-powered Astral Barrage, which I didn't know was a spread move. In the end, it was Moxie's patience and strategic foresight that led to a decisive and well-done victory in this intense Regulation G battle. After thousands of simulation and countless battles, it's road to the top from here, and starting off, we have Sinistcha at 99. Sinistcha is honestly one of my favorite Generation 9 Pokemon, and honestly, Matcha Gotcha is a really goated move. In 97, we've got Mienshao, who is actually a really good offensive pivot and spread defender. Having close combat over high jump kick was really good, but I think that made it targeted by the AI a lot more due to the stat drops, causing it to have a pretty bad win-loss ratio. Annihilate comes in at 96, and my good Rocky boy Hisuian Arcanine comes in at 95, with a surprising impact index of 24.4, well above the average. Alolan Raichu comes in at 93, which was pretty interesting because I never considered Surge Surfer to be good enough of a reason to run, but clearly its ranking here is telling us a very different story. Big Chungus himself, Graveler, comes in at 92, Indeedee Male at 91, and Comfy at 90. Comfy being so low on the chart is pretty interesting to me because it seemed to be extremely well equipable for Minotaupo simulation, but I think it's because the AI was punishing it for being a passive Pokemon. However, the same couldn't be said for It will function very similarly to Comfy, but we will discuss it when we get there. Coming in 88 and 87 position are the Sun and Moon themselves, Solgaleo and Lunala. I guess in this case, Pokemon Moon is better than Pokemon Sun. Lunala saw a lot more play thanks to it being a lot more bulkier and usable in Trick Room teams, although due to the simulation being a lot more offensive, Lunala was able to clutch it up for his team at 4.59%, which kinda edged it out over compared to Solgaleo. Latias comes in at 86 with a surprising impact index of 222, and the Aurora Veil and Snow Setter itself comes in at 85, despite having a negative impact index. It's also really unfortunate that every time Alolan Ninetales was in a match against a Pokemon like Kyogre or Groudon or any Pokemon that set up the weather but was slower than it, it would still proceed to go for Aurora Veil, which is probably why it's had a really poor impact index. Despite the visual nerf on some of the best moves in the game, Regidrago and Regigigas comes in at 84 and 83 respectively. When I saw this, I honestly had to dig up teams that piloted Regigigas because there was only 5 of it, and I kinda realized how much of a singles player I was. I didn't even know that neutralizing gas could ignore slow start. So it was unsurprising when Regigigas' most common partner was, say it with me guys, Weezing. Gyarados and Orthworm comes in at 82 and 81 respectively, and fun fact, there were only 2 of each of them played in the entire round robin, and Mr. Catastic ran both of them on the same team that looks like Double's take on Stall. Is that Double's take on Stall? I'm sorry, I'm really dumb. So please let me know if this is Stall or not. It also helped that due to them running an insanely defensive set, they were able to survive more battles and ended up giving them an impressive impact index of 334 and 300 respectively. Iron Valiant and Gastrodon ranked 80 and 79 respectively, with Gastrodon proving to be a lot more of a team player than Iron Valiant will ever be. Therefore, Gen 4 Slug, Best Slug confirmed. In 75th, we've got Thundurus Styrian, and in 74th place, we've got Crystal Turtle. Terrapagos. Regular Moon Ursaluna comes in at 73rd with a clutch performance of 4.6, which is well above the average. Kyurem White at 72, and then we move on to the interesting picks. Iron Jugulis and Iron Moth, who were commonly paired with Miraidon thanks to its electric terrain, landed in 71 and 69 respectively. At 68, we've got Hitmontop, who was the OG fake-out Intimidate Pokemon. The OGs will know this Pokemon. It may have lost its place thanks to Incineroar, but honestly, its presence was definitely still felt. It was able to provide powerful doubles utility support and clocked an impressive win-loss ratio of 2.09 and an incredible impact index of 252. Definitely don't count out Hitmontop when you're planning for your Regulation H matches. 67 was Talonflame, who was able to pack both Wisp and Priority Tailwind onto the same Pokemon, which was an interesting niche that needed to be filled by some teams. Mewtwo clocks in at 66 thanks to the overwhelming power of Psy Spam teams. Ditto comes in at 65 and Latios at 64. Cornerstone Ogerpon comes in at 63, and our first upset of the power ranking, Calyrex Ice, comes in at 60. Not too unsurprising, cause Trick Room teams are at a disadvantage in this simulation since the simulation doesn't try its best to retain its setters, creating a situation where Calyrex Ice gets overwhelmed by faster attackers instead of it being able to overwhelm others. Forwarding a bit, we've got OU's favourite coin stack, Golden Gold in 57, with an overall pretty stellar performance despite its inability to terrestrialize. It still gets terrorized by Incineroar though, so it's definitely loving its position in singles way more than in doubles. Ogerpon Herflame, who is banned in OU singles, clocks in at 54th place with its powerful ability neutralized due to it not being able to terrestrialize. Maybe I should do one ranking where terrestrialization is allowed. I wonder how that will change the meta. In 52nd place, we've got Dondozo, and unlike in singles where I can discuss Dondozo individually, doubles require me to discuss Dondozo alongside its commanding officer Tatsugiri. Commander is such a unique ability because it supercharges Dondozo depending on which Tatsugiri is piloting Dondozo, and made Dondozo such a huge threat, and it actually helped Dondozo clock in a lot more wins than Tatsugiri. What about the respective Tatsugiris? Droopy came in at 242, Stretchy at 172, and Curly at 40. Curly clocked in at 40, and that can easily be explained by the fact that Tatsugiri survives even when Dondozo gets knocked out. So technically, Tatsugiri is the one that is benefiting from this interaction. In 51st place, we've got Brute Bonnet, and guarding the doors to top 50, we've got the Queenly Majesty herself, Zarina. Zarina's ability to block priority is actually pretty cool, but it's a pretty paper-thin Pokemon, so it probably was the reason why it was only seen on 22 teams, unlike Farigiraf with the same ability in the form of Armor Tail. Alright, I can hear you guys asking me, well, Mocha, this is a Pokemon ranking video. Where is the type ranking? I hear you guys, I hear you. It was a little bit more intricate when it came to ranking Pokemon, but I did it. First, I assigned the Pokemon's final position as a point to their individual types. This means that Pokemon like Meowscarada, who placed 221st overall, gave 221 points for Grass and Dark types. Then I counted how many types there were and averaged the numbers out to get the final scores. Steel and Dragon types lead the rankings as per expectations, having the lowest average point score of 91.16 across 19 Pokemon. That's pretty much expected at this point. What is interesting is who came in third place. Instead of the usual Fairy type dominating the charts, in third place we have Flying type, with an average score of 101.74 across 27 Pokemon. It's pretty interesting to see since prankster Pokemons like Murkrow and Tornadus and by extension Talonflame are all flying types and contributed to the points thanks to their pretty decent showing. I wonder what other flying types are there in the top 50 rank. The bottom 3 typings are Electric, Rock, and Bug, with Bug typing giving me the biggest fake out because originally I had only counted their total point tally and Bug scored the lowest amongst all the other types. But then I realized there were only 8 Bug type Pokemon in the entire list of Pokemon used in Regulation G. Just like how Zarina blocked the gates to top 50, Giratina stood behind the gates at 49th. Like a true boss. In 48, we've got Volcarona, the one of the only few bug-type Pokemons in Regulation G, who has given me PTSD in singles and yet in doubles it's fairly even a menace. 47, we see one of my favorite Pokemon to use even in singles back when it was first released, Galarian Wheezing and Neutralizing Gas. Clocking in at an impressive 2.4 win-loss ratio and an insane impact index of 22.5. Wait, it's not 22.5, it's 225.2. Despite its extremely low usage count of 5. It shows us how impressive Galarian Wheezing's ability and type has allowed it to pull through. On top of that, it was paired with mons that had restrictive abilities like Regigigas, and while being able to neutralize opposing abilities like Calyrex Rider's Neigh abilities and Urshifu's Unseen Fist, made it an extremely good pick when it's paired on a team that can use it well. Glimmora comes in at 46, and the better screen setter, I dare say, Grimmsnarl comes in at 45, while Roaring Moon comes in at 44. Ursaluna Blood Moon, which is banned in OU, comes in at a solid 43rd place with an insanely solid 84% win to total battles ratio, well above the average of 25.2. Forwarding up a little more, Landorus Tyrion, who has always been a solid and popular pick, comes in at 37. While 35th, we've got Iron Hands. Iron Hands is actually pretty interesting because it's a really slow attacker but is really good defensively and it can easily leverage off of being in doubles. In 32nd place, we've got another popular rain abuser, Archaludon, who is actually wreaking havoc in Regulation H right now. And 31st, we've got the rain setter, Pelipper. With the ability to nullify priority and set up trick rooms, Farigiraf clocks in at 24th, alongside Calyrex Shadow, who sits solidly at 23, thanks to his wide variety of sets and insane power output. So guys, now that you already see Farigiraf and Calyrex Shadow here, what are your bets on who is the top Pokemon in the current VGC Regulation G meta? Leave it down in the comment section below, okay guys? Alright, moving on. Zacian Hero comes in at 21st and is the only Pokemon who appeared only 8 times across all the teams simulated but ended in the top 25 of the Pokemons used in VGC Regulation G. Clocking in at an impressive 329 impact index and 2.39 win-loss ratio, it toppled Zamazenta Hero and Crown Form. Rillaboom comes in at 20th position with an incredible clutch performance of 47%, making it the 3rd ranked Pokemon in terms of clutching it out for its team thanks to Grassy Terrain and Grassy Glide. Iron Bundle is the top future Pokemon sitting at 19 and Eternatus sits at 18 as the Pokemon with the most number of games that lasted over
50
turns, which is possibly why it's got an impact index of 136.7. In 17, we've got Urshifu Rapid Strike with the largest win proportions clocking in at 7.42% and an amazing clutch performance of 47%, landing it at the second position as the most clutch Pokemon in Regulation G. Raging Bolt came in 13th and Chiyu came in 12th, heralding the 11th position to Miraidon. And finally in top 10, we've got the most clutch Pokemon in all of Regulation G, and that is our boy Incineroar. That's right, Incineroar isn't placed first according to the simulation, but it definitely was the most clutch Pokemon since it provided so much utility to its teammates, coming in with an impressive 51.4% clutch performance ratio and making up 5.9% of all wins. Incineroar's position is definitely well deserved and earned. Funny enough, Incineroar's biggest losses were to Bellibolt and Iron Jugulis, with a 0.367 win-loss ratio with Bellibolt and 0.355 win-loss ratio with Iron Jugulis. Okay guys, now we are in the top 10. Coming in 9th, we've got NK, who is the highest position legendary dog. Jason Crown comes in at 8, who is technically a dog, or is it a wolf? I think it's a wolf, right? Because it howls, but a dog can howl too. Koraidon comes in at 7th as the superior Cyclizar ancestor. In 6th and 5th place, we've got Pokemon that not only terrorized OU, they also destroyed a lot of their competition, and they are King Gambit in 6th and Ogerpon Wellspring in 5th. In 4th, we've got an insane contender who was seen in only 46 teams but boasts an insane win-loss ratio of 1.83. And that, my friends, is Clefairy. Clefairy is in 4th place, guys. It's insane, I say it time and time again, but Clefairy is insane because it provides so much utility and was able to act as a very effective redirector. On top of that, because it was commonly paired with frail Pokemon, Frenguard and Icy Wind in particular, was able to push its support and utility extremely well, making it survive and ensure that the team was also able to survive a lot longer. And finally guys, we are at the top of the mountain. After wading through over 243 other contenders, we have finally reached the pinnacle of Regulation G metagame. In 3rd place, we've got Weavile? I'm kidding guys. Haha, you guys got pranked. It's Chien-Pao with a clutch performance of 19.6%. Despite its extremely frail typing and defensive stats, its ability to push through tough situations made it an extremely powerful mon, and Sword of Ruin acting as a stronger version of Intimidate since it can't be blocked by stat dropping items like Clear Amulet. Yes, I know that people are gonna tell me that Sword of Ruin lowers the defensive stat, not like Wo Qian's Tablet of Ruin which lowers the attacking stat, but the point I'm trying to make is that it dodges Clear Amulet, alright guys? So, who sits at number 2? To no one's surprise at all, the booster energy, photosynthesis abusing ghost itself, Fluttermane sits at number 2 among all the Regulation G contenders. With an appearance rate of 176 times, this spectral Pokemon picked up an incredible 70,938 wins. That is just scratching the surface. What makes Fluttermane so terrifying is how the AI excels in those high pressure clutch moments. 135 base special attack, special defense, and speed. It's like it was built to be a broken powerhouse. I wonder why Misdreavus and Mismagius couldn't have that kind of insane stat line. Its clutch performance percentage sits at a jaw-dropping 38.9%, meaning this Pokemon was able to carry its team whenever it was sent out. Moonblast and Shadow Ball is able to completely destroy the entire Unterrestrialized metagame, and yet despite all this dominance, it's still only sitting number 2. So who could possibly dethrone such a destructive force? Well, you will need a destructive force to overcome another destructive force, and it's none other than Urshifu Single Strike, the undisputed king of this meta. Taking the top spot at number 1, Urshifu Single Strike stands above the rest for one simple reason: consistency true destruction. With 85 appearances, 34,835 wins, and a 1.56 win-loss ratio, this Pokemon isn't here to play games, it's here to destroy the opponent and win. 97 base speed wasn't anything to write home about, but what really sets it apart is his signature move, Wicked Blow. Unseen Fist, Wicked Blow. This allowed it to tear through opposing defensive threats like they were made of paper. And on top of that, it has a guaranteed crit. What? Who designed this Pokemon? When you look deeper into the stats, it had a 20.3 clutch performance, which means it was able to consistently carry the team on its back with its high-powered attacks. 134.3% win over total battle, impact index of 144.68. On top of that, a lot of teams carry Focus Sash with Swords Dance or just went balls deep with the damage like Choice Band or Punching Glove. And this Pokemon was really able to dish out massive damage from the get-go, and its ranking really showed. Honestly, this is some amazing stats. This is why Urshifu Single Strike edges out Fluttermane for the number 1 spot, with a weighted final score of 93.75 compared to Fluttermane's 92.78. And there you have it. My hair is short, and that is the definitive ranking of each individual Pokemon in Regulation G. Each Pokemon left its mark that no simulation could have honestly predicted. But while we uncovered which Pokemon is the best, in VGC, it's not a 1v1 situation, it's a 6v6. So, what's the best team? Honestly, I have already created like a video structure for the best team, but it's gonna take a little bit of time. So if you guys like my content and you guys like this sort of videos, feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section below. And maybe if you guys wanna humor me with a little bit of your time, click the subscribe button down there. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye! Alright guys, welcome to Pokemon X, but every battle is a... So I've been meaning to replay X and Y for the story ever since Pokemon Legends C2A has been announced. On top of that, I've also been meaning to get into VGC. So I was thinking, what's the best way I can combine the both of them together? VGC is a double battle, so if I want to increase the challenge, I have to make it a... And on top of that, if I wanted to play a challenge, it would be Pokemon Hardcore Randomized Nuzlocke. Say that 10 times fast. So I'll be playing a randomized Nuzlocke Hardcore challenge of Pokemon X, but every... So how am I going to facilitate this? First off, we are going to be catching 2 Pokemons on Route 1.